Good morning. Hope you're having a great week. It is Friday, August 1st, 9:04 a.m. Central Daylight Time, local time here in Oklahoma City. I am at home in my computer room and we're going to do a load board video. And I'm going to try really hard not to rant and rave about other things. We're going to try, no promises. I'm going to try. But I have a really bad problem of, whenever I start thinking about something, I'll talk about it for an hour. So let's look over at the load board here really quick. This page is really cool. It shows the markets, and there are a few things that I'm going to try not to spend 2 hours talking about. I just want to point out a few things that are huge. Number one, the Los Angeles market is back at the top of the list. For people who don't follow this, Los Angeles used to be the most premium market in the country. Like they would just shower you with money taking loads out of LA. Like it was easy to make huge amounts of money hauling loads out of LA. Well, a couple of years ago, the West Coast port workers went off contract. They did not strike, they just went off contract. The fear of strike, because they were off contract, they could go on strike at any moment. And businesses diverted freight around the West Coast. They started going through the Panama Canal and offloading in the Gulf of America, the East Coast, the Great Lakes. So you saw freight volumes go up in the East Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia, New York market, Houston, Chicago, the Great Lakes area, from all that freight diverting around the West Coast. Well, now we're starting to see the California market come back up. I'm not sure exactly what's triggering it. It might be related to the tariffs. It may be businesses that are just really desperate to get products in after the disruption in the flow of products from the tariffs. Because it's a lot more expensive and a lot more time consuming to divert around the West Coast to go through the Panama Canal. So I don't know. This could be a short term thing, or maybe LA is going to become a premium market again. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But that is one massive thing that I'm seeing on this little market ticker thing. But back when LA was a premium market, it was like 1,000 plus loads above second place. And right now it's only 500 loads above Houston in second place. So we're not anywhere close to that premium level of LA yet. But we'll have to keep an eye on it and see what happens. Another thing that I'm seeing on here is the average rate per mile in the Philadelphia, New York City area, the East Pennsylvania market. That is the average rate per mile. Now, I think that is just on booked loads. It's not based on load listings. I think that average price is just based on loads that are actually booked. But $3.05 a mile as an average on booked loads is really, really high. That's like really high. I don't pay attention to the New York City, Philadelphia market because I'm not going over there. That's one of the markets that I refuse to go to. So I do, look at this page, fairly regularly, and to see any market over $3 a mile is kind of crazy. I don't think I've ever seen that. But anyway, those are just a few things that jumped out to me. And one thing I need to explain is that everything you see on Landstar's load board is full rate. It's what the customer's paying. So $3.05 a mile, I only get about 70% of that. So that's like what, $2.11 a mile? It'd be like 216 a mile or something like that. I can't remember. Somewhere in that ballpark. What I would make on a load that's paying 305 a mile would be like I think around 216 a mile. Um, so all of the prices that you see on here, those are the full rates. I get roughly approximately 70% of whatever prices you see on Landstar's load board. So don't, look at these prices and be like, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to become a millionaire hauling loads over at Landstar." No, you're not getting the prices that you see on here. You'll get approximately 70%, 65% of the line haul, 100% of the fuel surcharge. So let me pause this. a second here. Let's turn the blur effect back on. And we'll pull up some loads and start looking through some loads. I cannot book a load today because Landstar hasn't processed my DOT inspection yet. I'm still out of service. I got a DOT inspection done on the truck yesterday, but it's probably going to take them a few business days to process that paperwork. But we're just going to look at the load board. I can't actually book anything. One other thing I want to say before we start digging through the load board. Oh my goodness, I just thought of something and I already forgot about it. Let me disclaimer. I have these blur effects to try to block out agent phone numbers and stuff like that. So if you do happen to see an agent phone number, don't call them. This is a private load board. This is not a public load board like DAT load board. Yes, the majority of the loads on here are spot market loads that are also listed on DAT load board. But even those loads, you can't book them through the Landstar agents. So don't call the phone number. If you're not leased to Landstar and you see a phone number, don't call. You're just going to waste everybody's time. They're going to assume that you're a Landstar driver, and they're going to sit there and talk about the load with you. And then they're going to ask you if you want to book the load. And if you say yes, they're going to say, all right, what's your truck number? You're going to tell them the truck number. They're going to be like, that doesn't sound right, or that's not pulling up anything. And it's just going to go down a rabbit hole. And then they're going to realize, oh, you're not a Landstar driver. I don't know how you got our number, but this load's not available to you. So anyway, let me pause this and we will pull up some loads. All right, so this is a search that I have saved. Let's see what settings I have in here. So origin, Oklahoma City, 250-mile radius. That's good. That's good. I have my destinations restricted. I'll show you what I have set in here. So over on the western half of the U.S., I have Alaska removed, and that's it. Colorado is actually showing up. I usually remove Colorado as a destination, but it's in there right now. I have all of the Southwest selected: Arizona, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, all of the Midwest, and almost all of the South. I do not have Virginia or West Virginia selected in the South. They're a little bit too northeast for me. And I have nothing in the mid-Atlantic or New England or Canada selected. So I don't want to see loads going to Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, Washington, D.C. And I don't want to see Connecticut, Rhode Island, all that stuff. I think Ohio, yeah, Ohio is actually selected. I wouldn't go to Ohio. I might go to Ohio. I don't like going even as far northeast as Ohio. In all honesty, I don't. If I saw a load going to Ohio or Michigan, I wouldn't take it unless it was paying crazy money. So those are my destinations. I have this set as July 7th. All right, let's change that. Let's go to August 1st. And what else we got here? Trailer types. I basically have all of the trailer types selected that I can haul. So I don't have flatbed and stuff like that. Minimum revenue $3,000. Minimum rate per mile $270. And you can see up here at the top the number of loads that are showing up in your results. 11 available loads. So if you see a 0 up there, then maybe you could change this information, change your filters until you start seeing loads. Let's look in the advanced search and let's look at the flags. Team, I have it set to no. I don't want to see team loads because I can't haul team loads. Agent, I have it set as direct shipper, yes. So I'm only seeing direct shipper loads. Let's see what happens when I change it to all loads. It went from 11 to 38. So now there were 11 contract loads, and now there's 38 total loads. So what is that? 27 spot market loads. All right, let's update and run. Let's see what pulls up with that. See what we got going on here. So we've got Tulsa to Boca Raton, Florida. Okay, this is one of the problems that you run into is that there are certain markets that are horrible and they pay a premium because they're so bad. And even at the increased rates, they're still atrocious loads. So a lot of times I will remove destinations like Florida and Colorado from my destination list. I don't mind going to Florida or Colorado, but it has to pay enough money, and they rarely do. So I usually just remove them from my search results because your search results will be flooded with Florida and Colorado loads. And they are just horrible loads, even though they're paying more than loads going to other destinations. And that's what we're seeing right here is almost all of the search results are Florida. And $3 a mile to go to Florida is horrible. So I'm just going to skip across all the Florida loads. Gunter, Texas to Greenwood, South Carolina, max weight hazmat, 312 a mile. Again, that's the full rate. I get about 70% of what you see on here. I'm going to skim through here and see if I see anything worth a damn. You know what? Let's go up here and let's sort this by total revenue. Because the default sorting method is just, there's so many things wrong with Landstar's load board. I think by default it sorts by agency code, which doesn't make any sense at all. So let's see here. Arlington, Texas to Auburn, Washington. 293 a mile, $6,000. It's a light hazmat load, 10,000 pounds of hazmat. Washington and Oregon. The top three loads are all going to Washington and Oregon. Park City, Kansas to Ferndale, Washington, and Tigard, Oregon. Now, these two loads are nearly identical. In I wonder if they're the same load that's just posted with a different destination. A lot of the times, these agents will use the wrong zip code um, to make the rate per mile look better. But this is the same agency, the RBL agency, posting these two loads with near identical information. So it might actually be two different loads. They're not good loads. I just put my coffee in the microwave to warm it back up, and it's already cold again. Here's one that looks tempting. Tulsa to Roosevelt, Utah. I don't know where Roosevelt, Utah is at. I don't know if that's near Salt Lake or if it's out in the middle of nowhere. If it's not in Salt Lake, it's most likely out in the middle of nowhere because Salt Lake is like the only town in Utah. Everything else is middle of nowhere. 39,000 pounds of hazmat, 393 a mile. It looks like a decent load. Grand Prairie, Texas to Lakeland, Florida. 306 a mile. The SHO agency, 42,900 pounds. Okay, this is really suspect. Why is this load popping out to me? Why does it look suspicious? Because Grand Prairie, Texas, I'm familiar with some locations in Grand Prairie, Texas, one of them being a Saya terminal. I used to haul a lot of loads for Saya out of their Grand Prairie terminal. And the Saya contract is for a maximum of 42,000 pounds. But the agency that has I know of two agencies that have SIA contracts, the CGI agency and the VAM agency. VAM also has FedEx contracts. But this is the SHO agency that has this load. And this load has an extra stop on it. And it's not exactly 42,000 pounds, it's 42,900 pounds. So it looks very similar to a SIA load, but there are some things off on it. But let's see if there's any comments on it. I'm just curious on this load. The extra stop is in Dacula, Georgia. And there's not really much in the way of comments or additional information on that load. Like, it's not a good load. It just looked interesting. If I notice an agency has a contract with someone, then I try to make a mental note of that. There are a ton of LTL agency loads. All of these Lewisville, Texas loads, which is last time I left the house, I hauled a load for the LTL agency out of Lewisville, Texas. It's what is it? It's Ream and Rude, I believe. It's some air conditioner place. But I delivered it to three different air conditioning supply stores in Washington. Yeah, in the state of Washington. But they have a whole bunch of loads. So what? Florida, 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 Florida. They're almost all going to Florida. I really okay. I'm about to remove all the spot market loads because I'm not that interested in the spot market loads. I'm really mostly just interested in the contract freight because the spot market loads are just a nightmare to deal with. There was somebody that used to be a Prime driver, Prime Incorporated, and he's a YouTuber. I think he still does YouTube videos, and he was one of the big YouTubers over at Prime Incorporated, and he left Prime and came over to Landstar. And I remember seeing one of his. He's not a channel I really follow, um, but I remember seeing one of his YouTube videos after he was at Landstar for a couple of months, and he was in his YouTube. He creates drama to get views on his channel. So he'll make titles like, I'm quitting Landstar, I'm quitting Prime, or stuff like that. He just makes up, it's BS. It's not real. He just makes up crap like that for it's clickbait stuff. But he was legitimately talking about quitting Landstar. He ended up not doing it. Like the next video he made, he was like, "Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and stick around at Landstar." Um, but basically what he did his first couple of months at Landstar was he was running spot market freight, and it was just an absolute nightmare. Um, just loads canceling on you, not getting paid what you're promised, not getting detention pay, all kinds of weird problems. I do not like dealing with spot market loads because of all of the issues you run into with them. It's really common to like book a spot market load and then get a call a couple hours later and be like, yeah, they booked they canceled that load. Or you'll book the load at a price and then they'll be like, all right, let me um, get that load for you and I'll send you an email in a minute. And then they'll call you back 15 minutes later and be like, yeah, the load's not actually available at that price anymore. Somebody else agreed to move the load at a lower price, but they said that you could have the load if you would take it at this price. You deal with just it's really scummy stuff that you have to deal with on spot market loads. Whereas contract loads, you're dealing directly with the broker that has the load, and they typically move those loads all day, every day. So if they tell you something about the load, it's gospel. If they tell you you've got the load, you've got the load. So it's just a lot less drama. So I almost always haul contract loads with Landstar. I hardly ever haul spot market loads. The only reason we're looking at spot market loads right now is because I'm doing a load board video. If I was looking for a load for myself, I wouldn't even be looking at this trash because I don't care what it says on the load listing. That's bull crap. They can list a load up here for $12 a mile on a spot market load. You call in on it, you're not getting it for $12 a mile. That's not always the case. I have hauled some spot market loads a couple of times, but usually there's just too much drama. I don't want to deal with it. All right, let's go change the search parameters. I just want to look at spot market loads. I'm sorry if anybody's going to be pissed off because um, I remove the spot market loads. We're going to see fewer loads, but those spot market loads are BS loads. A lot of the times when Landstar agents are posting spot market loads, they're just making up what they think they might possibly be able to negotiate the rate at. These are not realistic rates on the spot market loads. Now, sometimes, like you remember the potato chip load that I hauled from somewhere up near Minneapolis to like Colorado Springs? That was a spot market load, but the Landstar agent moved that load for another broker like every day. So it was almost like a contract load because that Landstar agent worked with another broker all the time moving those loads. So there was like zero drama with that load. All right, so now we're just looking at the only thing I changed was spot market loads, right? Yeah, I just got rid of the spot market. So now we're just looking at the contract loads. All right, CGI agency, Dallas, Texas to Fontana, California. 35,000 pounds. This sounds like a Saya load. Whole bunch of LTL agency loads. Here's a VAM load from Grand Prairie to Salt Lake. Let's see if VAM has any notes. I'm wondering if, I'm betting this is a Saya load. Drop and hook at both ends, possible hazmat. Lane weight can range from 2,000 to 42,000. So the max contract weight is 42,000 pounds. And what they listed at is 32,000 pounds because they think that's the average that these loads weigh, which is not true. They even put it in here that it can be up to 42,000 pounds, but is almost always 32,000 or below. That is not true. Every load that I've hauled out of Grand Prairie, Texas for Saya has been over 36,000 pounds. So it's not, you know, most of the loads are below 32,000. That's a load of crap. A lot of these agents just don't pay attention to stuff. They just make stuff up. They're salesmen. They're marketing and salespeople. You can't trust anything marketing and salespeople say. But I suspect that this is a Saya load. $3.15 a mile going to Salt Lake. That's not a bad load. Salt Lake's not a horrible market, but it's not very good. And this RBL agency has a bunch of auto part loads. Well, not a bunch. They've got 2 auto part loads. Auto part loads usually pay a really big premium, but the RBL agency is not paying a big premium on these loads. And then all these LTL agency loads are the Ream account. Looks like they're almost all going to Florida. And then the CAN agency, is that the agency that I did the SOS load for? And they screwed me out of detention pay. Amazon refused to pay detention pay. I delivered to an Amazon facility in Amarillo. Just a second here. I got a message I need to look at. All right, we're back. Sorry about that long wait. Okay. So I wouldn't say these loads are all bad, but nothing's really jumping out to me. There aren't any like really awesome loads on here. Let's You know what? Let me do a completely new search because this is one of my saved searches. I don't want to go in and mess with it. So we're going to do a completely new one. Let's click on available loads here. And you know what? We're not going to set a whole bunch of parameters. Right here. Okay, 68,000 loads. Let's do minimum revenue of $8,000. Now we have 115 loads. That is not good. The way I used to judge the LA market was by how many loads over $8,000 the LA market had. And if there were only one or two $8,000 loads, then it wasn't doing too well. But if there was like pages and pages of $8,000 loads, which there were, I don't know, something like, how many loads were on a page? This was on the old load board. I want to say that there were like 20 loads on a page or something like that. I can't remember. But when the Los Angeles load the Los Angeles load board, when the Los Angeles market was like on fire, there would be pages of $8,000 loads. Like there would be like 40 plus $8,000 loads just in the LA market. Now, Landstar has 115 total loads across the entire load board over $8,000. And I would suspect most of them are oversized, overweight, or team loads. So let's get rid of some of those loads. So let's put a max weight of 45,000 pounds. And we went down to 91 loads. We were at 115, right? Yeah, 115 down to 91. So 15 plus 9, 24 of the loads were overweight loads. Now, let's do team. So we're at 91. And we went down to 84. So 7 of the loads were team. Now, how do we get rid of over-dimensional? I would have to do it by trailer type. So let's select container. And let's select van. And needing power only and specialized. And let's just do that. Now we're down to 36 loads. Let's look at those 36 loads. When I first started with Landstar, and you would do a search like this of all the loads on Landstar's load board, there would be a whole bunch of loads up at the very top that were like $100,000. These were tours and stuff like that. Landstar's load board used to have tons of like long-term contracts to do like tours and stuff like that. I hardly ever see those loads on the load board now. All right, Alaska, 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 Alaska. We're just ignore the Alaska loads. You do not want to haul one of these Alaska loads. All right, here's one, Linwood, Pennsylvania to Linwood, Pennsylvania. It's almost 5,000 miles. How much you want to bet that it's going from Linwood, Pennsylvania to Alaska back to Linwood, Pennsylvania? It is a really cheap rate per mile. Let's check it out. There are several different agencies that have it listed. It's going from Linwood, Pennsylvania to Lost Pine, Texas, and then back to Linwood. And down in the comments, it says team needed round trip. Over here for team, it says no. This is some of the shady stuff that these agents do, is they don't like, they don't put all the correct information on the load listing so that more people see it. And a lot of it comes down to just laziness. or ineptitude. All right, Alaska, Alaska, Alaska. All right, here's another Texas. Culpeper, Virginia to Houston, Texas. Is that clothing? I don't think I've ever seen that commodity type. Has 6 extra stops on it. It's a really cheap rate per mile, 232 a mile. We only get about 70% of that. So what is that, like $1.65 a mile? That is so cheap. It's just a massive mileage run. You know what? Let's sort this by revenue. There we go. Alaska, 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 Alaska. I'm trying to just skip over all the Alaskas. Okay, El Segundo, California to Cape Canaveral, Florida. Van with lift gate. So this is a specialized load. 389 a mile for 10 grand. So this is the type of loads that you used to see coming out of the LA market all the time. 350 a mile, $4 a mile going coast to coast. 8, 9, 10. I think the most expensive load I hauled out of California ever was a load that paid over $13,000 on the full rate. After all the percentage cuts, I think I made over $9,000 on the load. It was a furniture load from some place in Central California, South Central California, just north of LA somewhere. And it was going to, I think, Jacksonville, Florida. So it wasn't even going like deep down into Florida to the central or southern Florida. So like it was an amazing load. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, this is not too great. Almost all these loads are Alaska loads. Not that amazing. All right. So now, let's see here. Let's go with what market are we going to look at? Let's look at Los Angeles, Fontana, California. And let's do a 150-mile radius around Fontana, which this is the LA market. For those of you who don't know where Fontana is at, Fontana is like an industrial park on the east side of LA. What other parameters are we going to set? Let's do a minimum revenue of $3,000 and a minimum rate per mile of 250. 346 loads. That's a lot of loads. Is there anything else that I need to select on here? I've got teams removed. Direct shipper. Oh, I'm looking at, I don't want to see spot market loads. Let's just do direct shipper. Now we went down to 38 loads. Almost all the loads were spot market crap. Make believe loads. All right, let's look and see what we got. So let's do 2 sorts. We're going to first sort by revenue. We're looking for the big mileage loads. So we got the El Segundo, California to Cape Canaveral. It requires a lift gate, which is a specialized trailer. It's 20,000 pounds of hazmat. It's a pretty good rate per mile. I don't know where in the hell Cape Canaveral is at. I think it's in really far south Florida. City of Industry, California to City of Industry, California, round trip load. Anytime I see round trip loads, they pique my interest because it could be a dedicated run. A lot of the times whenever you see round trip loads, you'll see in the comment section, we have this load every week, stuff like that. And you're like, oh, sweet. I could do that dedicated run. But you don't see many dedicated runs on the loads board anymore because people are desperate. Anytime they see a dedicated run, they're like, I want that. I'll do it. And you'll never see it on the load board again. So you have to leave the trailer over the weekend to be loaded. You're taking loaded cylinders to where? Westlaco, Texas, and you're bringing empty cylinders back. Yeah, that's a very, very heavy load. I don't even know if I could scale that load. It's listed at 44,500 pounds. I have a heavy truck with a lot of crap in it. I don't think I could haul it. If the weight is accurate, which it's usually not. City of Industry, California to Fort Pierce, Florida. And it's the same agency. So it's probably those heavy cylinders again. But this one isn't a round trip. You're just going one way. And I didn't even notice if they said what kind of hazmat it was. So San Diego to Piscataway, New Jersey, it's some weird agency. BL8. It's very rare to see an agency with a number. That probably means that they're a really new agency. So this could be some new contracts we have. I might need to search. Let me see what they got in the comments. See if I can figure out what this is. Drop and hook at loading 24/7, live unload by appointment. It's electronics. It's not paying very well. The rate per mile is really low. And here's another one of their loads going to Florida, and it's only paying 276 a mile, which we only get about 70% of that. So 276 a mile is, what is that? It's like around $2 a mile, approximately, somewhere in the ballpark of like $1.95 a mile or something like that. It's not horrible, but it's not very good. It is actually horrible for Florida. If it was going into a decent market, that wouldn't be a bad rate, but going to Florida, that's horrible. So yeah, now we're getting to the revenues to where these are not big mileage runs. And if they are, they're paying a really terrible rate per mile. So now let's sort by rate per mile and look at more of the I-5 stuff. There's usually really good paying loads that just run up and down the I-5 corridor between Oregon, Washington, and California, and dipping over into Colorado. So Colton, California to Bellingham, Washington, 1,600 miles. It has 11 extra stops on it. So you have your pickup, your final delivery, and then 11 extra stops in between those. So 12 total deliveries. This is the SUL agency. Whenever I'm up in the Portland, Seattle area, I get lots of load alerts from the SUL agency for these big stop loads. And I think the ROR agency is the other one that I get a lot of load alerts on for the like 40 stop loads. So Colorado, Florida, Washington, Sweetwater, Texas. All right, that just doesn't make any damn sense at all. Moreno Valley, California, the FLS agency. So this is the Harbor Freight account going to Sweetwater, Texas, and they have it listed at 1,100 miles at $3.09 a mile. Is Sweetwater, Texas only 1,100 miles from LA? That mileage seems really short. Let me pause this while I Google it. Well, that seems accurate. Google says it's 1,150 miles, so they're about 50 miles short, but it's reasonably close. But I am seeing a shift in the LA market. Um, for the last couple of years, I've been looking at the LA market. It was really hard to find loads to get you back to the central part of the country or further east. Most of the loads were paying like $1.50 a mile to the truck. Um, the only loads that were paying anything worth a damn were just going up and down I-5. So if you ever went over to the West Coast to the LA market, it was really hard to make money on a load getting back east. Let me check fuel prices really quick. Um, Over there, fuel prices have gone up like 30 cents a gallon over the last month or so. Fuel prices in California aren't like they're high, but they're not that crazy. Like fuel prices in the cheapest fuel in Kingman, Arizona is 301 per gallon. And then over, let's check Bakersfield, which usually has some of the cheapest fuel in Southern California. That's it's 327, 326. So the Flying J in Bakersfield, last time I drove through there a month or two ago, the Flying J in Bakersfield was almost the exact same price as Kingman, Arizona. And now it's 26 cents a gallon more expensive. So yeah, California fuel prices have gone up. And the TA in Portland, the cheapest fuel I can get in Portland, 326 a gallon. The exact same price as Bakersfield. Like the cheapest fuel I can get in the LA area is like 326 a gallon. The cheapest in Portland is 326 a gallon. What about Seattle? Seattle is 378 a gallon. Fuel for me in Seattle is 50 cents a gallon more expensive than LA. What in the hell? Like this is something that's been happening for the last few months is fuel prices in the Oregon and Washington area have gone ballistic. And I am not sure exactly why. It could have to do with refineries shutting down. I'm not sure why in the world fuel prices are so insane. Now, the fuel prices that I'm talking about, I'm talking about raw fuel price. I'm talking about fuel price after discount and not including fuel tax. If you look at fuel tax, then you're going to get a skewed view of reality because fuel tax in California is like $1 a gallon. Oregon does not charge fuel tax at the pump. So Oregon price is going to be the 326 a gallon. That's what you're going to see at the pump is 326 a gallon. And then California, you're going to see 426 a gallon. It's going to look like California is $1 a gallon more expensive, but it's not because that dollar a gallon is all fuel tax. And how much fuel tax do I pay? It has nothing to do with what I'm charged at the pump. I pay fuel tax based off mileage driven in each state. So if I'm using the fuel tax, just a second here, I got another message. All right, and we're back. And I completely forgot what I was talking about. Were we talking about fuel prices? Oh, yeah. The short version is you should not look as a truck driver. Now, if you're for your personal vehicle, your car, where you're not on a mileage fuel tax system, your fuel taxes are based off what you pay at the pump. So by all means, use fuel tax at the pump to determine where you get fuel. But as a truck driver, where you're on a mileage based system, what you pay at the pump is meaningless. You're just prepaying taxes at the pump. So you should not be using that to determine what fuel to purchase, unless you're one of those people that's like lying about your fuel. And like, like if you're running some kind of scam or you're doing something illegal, then you do you, bro. Don't take my advice. You've made decisions to do things your way. You keep doing them your way. But anyway, um, yeah, it's for fuel prices in Oregon. Like Oregon used to be one of the Portland area used to be one of the cheapest places to get fuel in the country. Like Portland, Oregon, Memphis, Tennessee, or West Memphis, Arkansas. Um, like those were known as two places in the country that always had really cheap fuel. And now Portland, Oregon is one of the most expensive places to get fuel in the country. I really need to do some research and figure out what has changed and why fuel prices in Portland have gone up so high. But Washington has gone up even higher. The fuel prices between like Portland and the Seattle area used to be similar. Whenever you were looking at raw fuel price, not counting fuel tax, because Washington charges tax at the pump, Oregon doesn't. So if you're looking at pump prices, there's always been a significant difference between the two of them. But if you've been looking at raw fuel price, not including fuel tax, the prices between Oregon and Washington have always been like fairly similar. They've been close. There have been times where I didn't fill up in Portland because it was actually cheaper to get fuel in Seattle. Um, but now for Portland fuel prices to be the same as LA and for Seattle to be like 50 cents a gallon more expensive than Portland, like what is going on? There's something huge with the petroleum industry going on in the Seattle, Portland area, in the Oregon, Washington area. And you know what? Let me spend a couple of minutes Googling and see if I can see what's going on. So what I'm about to say, take it with a grain of salt. This is like 5 to 10 minutes of research. Um, so I haven't done like thorough investigation on this, but it looks like it's not one specific thing. It looks like it's a combination of a lot of things. And it's really hard to piece this puzzle together because of politics. The radical left has a way of spinning the narrative to try to make themselves look better. So it looks like part of the problem of the high fuel prices is Oregon and Washington increased their fuel taxes recently. And they've been increasing their fuel taxes and they continue to increase their fuel taxes. Also, they have implemented carbon taxes. So refineries are paying extra taxes and they're passing it down to the consumer for like carbon emission taxes. So that's part of the problem. Now, the radical left is spinning that as saying that it's not really increasing fuel prices. It's kind of crazy. That's absurd. But they're saying that all of the additional taxes that they're imposing on the refineries are only increasing fuel prices by 3 cents a gallon, which is absolutely insane for them to make that claim. But aside from the increases in not just fuel taxes, but also carbon emission taxes on refineries, something else, I knew that refineries were shutting down, but I didn't know it was this bad. So Valero in Benicia, California, outside of San Francisco, is planning to cease operations in April of 2026 at their refinery. But also another refinery, a Phillips 66 refinery, um, said that it's going to cease operations and it's going to begin winding down operations in October. So you might think, oh, this is not going to affect fuel prices today because one of the refineries in California is going to start shutting down in October of this year, like 2 months from now, and the other one's going to shut down in April of next year. Well, fuel is everything is on a like a futures market. So anything that's going to happen in the future is going to affect fuel prices today. Also, there was a fire at the Benicia refinery in April. if they're shutting down that refinery in a year, are they going to spend a lot of money repairing a fire? Like if that fire decreased their production capacity, do you think that they're going to, like dump $5 million into that refinery that they're in the process of closing? No, they're probably just going to like band-aid solution it, and if it drops production by 50,000 barrels a day, then so be it. We're shutting it down anyway. I haven't dug into it to see if that's the case, but I saw a news article that there was a fire at the refinery in Benicia in April, and it's also planning to shut down next April, like a year from when the fire happened. So, I could spend all day digging into this to try and figure out everything that's affecting the fuel prices, but it looks like it's primarily three things affecting the fuel prices along the West Coast. And that is increased taxes on the petroleum industry by the radical left, through fuel taxes and carbon emission taxes. And also, the radical left is driving refineries out of business. They're just choosing to shut down refineries because of how the term that they use right here in the article is market dynamics, which is it's basically it's just not worth it to operate in California, is what they're saying. It's just not profitable to operate in California, and it's just not. It's too volatile with the politicians, so it's just not worth it. They're just shutting down their refineries because it's not worth it to operate in California. But anyway, let me pause this and shut down these news article pages. All right. So yeah, it looks like I'm going to be avoiding, like, the triangle I normally run is Dallas, Seattle, Portland, and then like Minneapolis, and then Dallas, Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis. That's the triangle I normally run, but freight is horrendous coming out of the Seattle, Portland area, and fuel prices are insane in the Seattle, Portland area. It's absolutely crazy how high the fuel prices are there. So, I mean, like I was just looking at Seattle fuel prices, and what was it? It was like 378 a gallon, and that's not including fuel tax. Yeah, 378 a gallon. Let me see if the camera can pick that up. I think it focused in on it for a second or two. 378 a gallon at the TA just east of Seattle off of I-90. That's the cheapest place I can get fuel in the Seattle area. That is the raw fuel price, not including fuel tax. Let me see what the pump price is. Like what you would see on the sign. The pump price is $4.99 a gallon. So, it's 58 cents a gallon fuel tax, and we get 62 cents a gallon, discount. So 4.99 a gallon is the pump price, and I'm pretty sure that that pump price includes a 6 cent per gallon discount for using either cash or a fuel card. You get 6 cents a gallon off at TA Petro if you use cash or a fuel card. So if you're using a normal debit or credit card to pay for fuel, you're paying 5.05 a gallon. 5.05 a gallon at the TA just east of Seattle. That is crazy. All right, so that's the entire LA market. Now let's look at one other place. So we're going to do an unboxing while we're looking at this next one. What do we want to look at? What do we want to look at? I'm gonna we'll do the Seattle Portland real quick. We're just gonna look at the available loads. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be 0. So let's do Portland, Oregon. Oh my goodness. And we'll do 250 miles, 9 loads. There's more loads than I thought would show up. It's probably all those 40 stop loads. Yeah. Number of stops. Every single one of these is a multi-stop load. Every single load in this list is a multi-stop load. 34 extra stops, 18, 28, 36, 18, 25. So Um, I mean, the pay on them is decent, but you're basically a local delivery driver getting paid by the mile. It's not good to be paid by the mile as a local delivery driver because you're not getting paid doing your loading and unloading and all the rest of that stuff. You don't get paid for that stuff. You're only getting paid to drive. So their top load is $9,700. It has 34 extra stops on it. Staten, Oregon to Cleburne, Texas. 3,057 miles. So from Staten, Oregon to Cleburne, Texas, it's only about 2,000 miles. So you have 1,000 extra miles on this load. So that means you're driving somewhere up to like, I don't know, North Dakota or something, and then coming down to Texas. Let's look at the route on this. Let's see what kind of crazy routing they have on this. Oh, wow. No, you're going straight to Texas. How are you getting that many extra miles? Because Portland to Dallas, I've run that many, many times. It's like 2,000 miles. And you're driving an extra 1,000 miles. Let me figure out how to zoom in here. You're just driving a big circle around Texas. That's the reason you're able to get the extra 1,000 miles. So you're coming into Sherman and then driving out to Texarkana and then down to Marshall and then Tyler and then back to Dallas and through Dallas, and you're just running like all over the place. You're doing 1,000 miles driving around in Texas. If I was up in the Seattle Portland area trying to get out of there, I would take that load. I hate multi-stop loads, but I would take that load. I would do it. I would make that happen. How long are you on this load? It's a 10-day load from August 1st to August 11th. 10 days. I would still deal with it. I would just deal with the drama of, I mean, you're doing a whole bunch of local deliveries in the Dallas Fort Worth area. That's gonna suck. But last time I was up in the Seattle Portland area, I tried to book a load going from Portland to Oklahoma, and it had like 30 stops in Oklahoma, and somebody else booked it before me. It was only on the load board for like 5 or 10 minutes. Somebody else snagged it up. And I would be willing to bet money that this load is going to disappear within 15 minutes off the load board. Let's refresh. It's at 0 minutes right now. Let's refresh. Staten, Oregon to Cleburne, Texas. Is it gone already? It's gone. No, no, no. Right there it is. See, it changes the list. It sorts alphabetically by the agency code. Why would they do that? That makes no sense. Almost all load boards sort by the total pay on the load, by the revenue from highest to lowest, but not Landstar. No, we're going to sort it alphabetically by the agency code that listed it. Who's the genius coming up with this stuff? All right, so how old is that load? The Cleburne, Texas. It's only been on the load board for 3 minutes. So I'm betting it won't be there longer than 15 minutes. So we'll try to keep an eye on that. You know what? I don't want to sit here on this for 15 minutes. Hurry up and disappear. We'll come back and check on it in a minute. Let's look at another market while we do the unboxing. So Portland, I was surprised we were seeing any results in Portland. Atlanta. Let's do Atlanta. I was debating between Atlanta and Chicago. We might look at Chicago in a minute. 250 miles around Atlanta. 6 loads. What? That is crazy. More loads in the Seattle Portland area than in Atlanta. That is absolutely insane. What is going on with Atlanta? So you can look at those loads. Is there anything amazing? They all look like decent loads. I'm not seeing anything that looks hideous. Not seeing anything that looks amazing. Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, they're all going up into the deep Northeast. What in the hell, man? Atlanta, I thought you were a better market than that. All right, let's go look at Chicago. What might be happening is, you notice we saw that the LA market is getting a lot more loads. Well, it could be loads that were going to the Atlanta market are now being diverted to the LA market. So maybe the Atlanta market is tanking. And Chicago, the number of loads in the Chicago market has dropped as the number of loads in the LA market have gone up. So 25 loads. I think we're seeing a shift in the port paradigm, like where the freight is offloading, which ports the freight is going to. I think we're starting to see a shift. 25 loads. So I'll let you look at these and we'll try and scroll through that while we do an unboxing. So what is the unboxing? It is an inverter. Pure sine wave inverter. Why did I buy a new inverter for the truck? I think the brand name is Belt. BELTT. We'll see. This thing is heavy. I didn't expect it to weigh this much. So why did I get a new inverter? Well, there's a couple of reasons I got a new inverter. My old inverter is having issues outputting enough power. So I have a 1500 watt microwave, the same kind of microwave you put in a house, in the truck. And that microwave, I've put voltage monitors. Do I have one? I have several of them throughout the house. The little voltage monitors that you plug into an outlet and then you plug in the device behind it, and it tells you the voltage and the amps and the watts that it's using. I have one of those in the truck, and I was having issues with the microwave taking forever to heat stuff up. And so I tested, and the microwave was only getting 900 watts out of the inverter. So I thought, well, maybe it's because I have multiple things plugged in. So I plugged in just the microwave by itself, directly connected to the inverter with nothing else plugged in. And the maximum wattage that it could pull was 900 watts. And I tried it on every single outlet. I thought, maybe some of the outlets are limited to 900 watts. Nope. So it's a 2500 watt inverter. And I looked at the specs on it. It's a Cobra inverter that I paid like $300 for. And it is supposed to output 1500 watts on every single one of the outlets, up to a maximum of 1500 watts on every outlet. Not peak, but continuous, and it doesn't. It outputs a maximum of 900 watts on every outlet. And it puts out like dirty voltage, because like my induction cooktop, I took it out on the truck with me this last time, and it would not work off that inverter. So here it is. It would not work off that inverter. It has 3 different power modes. You can put it on 600 watts, 900 watts, or 1500 watts. It would not work on any power setting on it. And I think that's because it's not pure sine wave. So I don't think that has to do with the amount of wattage that it was putting out. I think that had to do with the type of power it was putting out. So I bought this. It's lower. The one I have in there right now is rated for 2500 watts, but it is not putting out anywhere remotely close to 2500 watts. This one is rated for 2,000 watts continuous and 4,000 watts peak. So I am going to, what in the hell is this? I don't know what this connection up here is. Is this a ground? There's another symbol right there. It's the same symbol that's next to this. And I think it might be live, neutral, ground. I'll have to look at the, I'll have to read up on the thing. And this is where the remote plugs in. Where's the remote at? Does the remote work off of an old school phone line? So here's the remote. Has on off. Is that looks like the only option I have on the remote. It looks like I'm going to be able to see a status indicator. So probably it'll tell me the voltage and stuff like that, and I can just turn it on and off. That's all I need. That's awesome. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to mount it because it's really thick at the back. I'm not going to cut a big hole into the side of something to mount that into it. So I probably will drill holes into the plastics and mount that in there. And it'll probably just stick way out. This will be up against like the side of the cabinet. But that's going to be really nice to have an on-off switch right there, because right now, whenever I want to turn the inverter on or off, I have to lift up the seat and lift up the door and then dig down in there and feel around until I can find the button on it. It's kind of a pain in the butt. It's not that big of a deal, but it is kind of annoying. And it's going to be nice to have a voltage monitor. I have several different voltage monitors and they're all very inaccurate. So hopefully this one's going to be accurate. I actually bought a box of like 6 voltage monitors to hook directly to the batteries so I could get accurate voltage from the batteries. But this should make it to where I don't need to install those. They're in the truck right now. I haven't bothered to install them. All right, let's scroll down through this list. My general takeaway from the load board is that there's a lot of mediocre loads on the board. There's a lot of decent loads on the board. And we're mainly just, I mean, there at the very beginning we were looking at some spot market crap, but ever since then we've mainly just been looking at contract freight. There's a lot of decent contract freight on Landstar's load board right now. Let me toss all this stuff over here. And I will not be using their battery cables. I have my own battery cables in there. The mechanic had to install thicker battery cables than this crap on my inverter because it's longer. And he told me that this is like the kind of battery cables that my inverter originally came with, an APU center in Stanfield, Missouri, or whatever it is, over by Joplin. Is it by Joplin? Or no, it's by Springfield, I think. It's over by Springfield, Missouri. APU center. Those morons installed using this type of battery cable. And this type of battery cable is okay for short distance, but they use this type of battery cable at about twice this length. It's like 3 times this length, actually. And the longer it goes, the thicker it has to be, the lower the gauge. And so they used this same gauge at like 3 times the length, and it was causing it to melt. So the mechanics swapped out the cables, and the cables that I have hooked up to my inverter now are like, they told me that they're like 0 gauge. Uh, these are like 2 AWG or something like that. Or does it? It should say it on here somewhere. It says 02 RV right there. I'm not sure if that's the gauge. It has a whole bunch of like Chinese writing on it. It does not clearly indicate the gauge, but I think it's 2 AWG, which is not sufficient. But I'll definitely hang on to it. I'm a hoarder like that. Might find some use for it. But yeah, the loads are looking decent. Let's check out a couple of agencies. Let's edit search, clear search. We're going to sort by agent. Let's do the CGI agency. They have the Saya account. Let's see what's going on with the Saya account. We have 206 loads. I'm mainly looking at origins to see if there's any hot spots where there's a lot of loads coming out of. They've still got this Oklahoma City to Henderson, Colorado load that they post all the time. This is impossible for a solo driver. They have it listed as a same day delivery. It picks up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and delivers at 7 p.m. at night. So you have to do this entire load in one single drive shift. Let me show you why this is impossible to do. Now, some moron over at CGI has this listed at 616 miles. So let me pause this while I map this out. All right, here we go. This is terminal to terminal. This is Saya Terminal in Oklahoma City to Saya Terminal in Henderson, Colorado. 675 miles, not 616 miles. How are they getting 616 miles? Now, this is the recommended path from Google. To do 616 miles, you would have to cut across and do almost straight line across Oklahoma, Kansas, and Colorado. You'd have to cut straight across. We'll use the measure distance thing here. This is the route you'd have to take, driving straight across through here on dirt roads, like country bumpkin dirt roads. That is going to take you longer than driving 675 miles on interstates. So let's look at this theoretically. So let's bust out a calculator. 675 divided by 11. You would have to have a 61 mile per hour average to drive between those two locations in exactly 11 hours. Exactly 11 hours of drive time. Your entire 11 hours. You would have to have a 61 mile per hour average. So you'd have to drive 65 miles per hour the whole way with absolutely zero delays. Now that sounds theoretically possible, right? Well, what about driving over and picking the trailer up? You need to drive over to the terminal to pick the trailer up. And you need to drive around on their property to like pick the trailer up, right? So let's say that you're 20 miles away, you're really close. So you have to drive 20 miles. So that's 20 minutes of driving to get there. And then you need to drive around on their property for 15 minutes to pick the trailer up. So that's 35 minutes of drive time right there that's gone picking the trailer up. And then after you deliver the trailer, are you just going to sit in the dock? No, you have to leave their property. So you're going to have to drive somewhere and park. That's another 20, 30 minutes of drive time that you need to find a place to park. So you have to have like an extra hour of drive time to pick the load up and to deliver the load. So let's take an hour away. So you only have 10 hours to drive it from Oklahoma City to Denver. So let's do 675 divided by 10. You would need a 67.5 mile per hour average to be able to deliver that load on time. Even if you were going 70 miles per hour, you had your cruise set at 70, you could not have a 67 mile per hour average. You'd be lucky if you could have a 65 mile per hour average. And the speed limit is for trucks is 70 at the highest across this entire route, I believe. I don't think there might be a short section in Oklahoma where it's a 75 mile per hour truck speed limit, but I'm pretty sure across almost this entire route, it's a 70 mile per hour truck speed limit. If the speed limit were 75 for trucks across the majority of this route, like 70% of this route, you might maybe be able to do this load on the schedule that they have. Maybe. But I don't think so. I don't think it's happening. This is basically an impossible load for a solo driver to do. And Saya schedules these loads, or CGI, or whoever schedules these loads, they schedule this crap like this all the time. Like a lot of their loads are like this, where it actually requires a team, but they list it as a solo. Now, I'm sure that Saya runs this route between Oklahoma City and Henderson all the time, but they're doing it as a meetup between two drivers. So the drivers are starting their clocks at the terminal and they're ending their clocks at the terminal, and they're meeting up in between. They don't have any wasted time. So yeah, I'm sure their drivers can do this, but a solo over the road driver can't do this. It's too tight of a schedule. But yeah, they CGI used to call me all the time and harass me about hauling this load. They haven't called me in a long time, and I'm really surprised based on how many of these loads they have posted. Well, none of them are picking up real soon. But they have these loads on the board all the time. And let's go look at Henderson. Let's go back here to the listings. And let's look for these Saya loads coming out of Henderson. Let me pause this. It looks like it might screw up and log me out. All right. It looks like we might have to end the load board video. I have completely closed and reopened and tried to load this beta load board back up. This is part of the jankiness. It's just not loading right now. I've completely turned it off, turned it back on, logged back into the Landstar website. All of Landstar's website's working except this load board. It's not working. So what I was going to do is check and see what loads were coming out of Henderson, Colorado under CGI agency, because last time I checked, they had some really good paying loads coming out of Henderson going to Salt Lake. And then I think I found some good loads for Saya coming out of Salt Lake going to like Portland. So I was thinking about, talking with them about like how strict are we on these appointments because like this is basically impossible for a solo driver to do. And I was going to, try to work something out with them on the appointment times. And I was going to hop basically over to Portland and I was going to make a ton of money. Like it was going to pay really well hauling those 3 loads to get from Oklahoma City to Portland. It was going to pay really well hopping across there doing those 3 loads because they were all paying like 350 a mile or something like that on the full rate. Of that, I get about 70%. Um, so it was going to be like pretty good money, but um, Landstar ended up stealing my trailer from me, and I had to go find a trailer instead of that. That's back whenever I went and I did that trailer that I picked up in Fort Smith or Van Buren, Arkansas, and I took it to Amarillo. If I would have had a trailer, then I was planning on booking that load coming out of Oklahoma City going to Henderson, Colorado. That's what I was thinking about doing. I actually called them and asked them if they would let me take that load without a trailer because it's a preloaded trailer. And they said, no, no, it's too hard for us to get trailers from trailer utilization. We don't like dealing with trailer utilization. So we do not give away trailers without an empty. It's company policy. Like that's nobody likes trailer utilization. They are a nightmare to deal with. Trailer utilization at Landstar is an absolute nightmare. But let me pause this and try refreshing it again. All right, it's working again, but it's janky and it's like really slow. So who knows how long it's going to work. So let's what we're looking for is Henderson. You know what? There's 195 loads. Let's just 0 loads. There's nothing coming out of Henderson. Now let's try Salt Lake. One load. Let's do 50 miles around Salt Lake. Salt Lake to Salt Lake. You used to see these round trip loads with CGI all the time, and they were dedicated loads. They were contract. You would basically sign up. See what I mean about it taking forever to load stuff? It's still acting really janky. Just a second here. All right, we're going to set on this page while that tries to figure itself out. Um, I paused it for a few seconds and it's not loading. But CGI used to have tons of dedicated runs out of just about every major city. They even had them out of Oklahoma City, and I called and asked them about them, and I was like, "So what's the deal? Am I just running out of Oklahoma City doing a line haul run where I'm coming back to Oklahoma City like every day? Am I just running out of the Oklahoma City terminal or what? And what's the pay on it?" Because they were putting just make believe numbers on the pay. And what they told me the pay was like 250 a mile on the full rate. So the loads are only paying $1.75 a mile. And Saya could send me anywhere they wanted. So it's a 1 week contract. You did 1 week at a time, and they could send you anywhere they wanted during that week as long as they got you back to Oklahoma City by the end of the week. So they could give you a load and have you go to New York City. I asked this specifically. I said, so they could have me on Monday take a load from Oklahoma City to New York City and then drive back to Oklahoma City. That's what they could do. And they said yes. And it's forced dispatch. You cannot say no to a load. And they can send you anywhere in the United States. And I said, well, this is not for me. This was back when freight was at all-time high rates. Like it was easy to get $4 a mile loads, and this thing was paying $2.50 a mile on the full rate. So, yeah, $1.75 a mile after the percentage cuts. That was horrendous back when we were at all-time high rates. That was that was so bad. And it was forced dispatch, and they could send you anywhere they want, including New York City. There were no limitations on where they could send you. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that crap. Like, what kind of idiot does that? And so I never did one of those dedicated runs for Saya, and I haven't seen any of those on the load board for a couple of years. All right, just a second here. All right, I'm flipping the camera just back over to me because the Landstar load board's doing all kinds of janky stuff. It's loading up. There's errors popping up. Could not reconnect to the server. Reload the page to restore functionality. Log out. You are now logged out. Click here to return. It's just doing all kinds of janky stuff. They might be doing some update on it, or who knows what. It looks like it's loading up now, and it's loading fast again. So maybe they just ran some kind of update and restarted a database or something. But let's go ahead and end the video there so that you're not having to sit here and deal with these technical issues with Landstar's load board for an hour. In general, it looks like things are solid. Like you can make a living on the load board right now. The rates aren't amazing. It's not all-time high rates like it was a couple of years ago, but it looks decent. Looks pretty decent. And based off what I'm seeing right now at this moment, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't really want to go back up to, I don't want to go over to the West Coast. I don't want to go to the Seattle, Portland area. I might be willing to go to the LA area, but I'm going to have to call around and see what I have to do to get back into CARB compliance. That permit that I have to get with California Air Resources Board, that new permit. I would have to get a new one of those. I'm not legal to drive in California right now, but if the LA market is coming back up, then what I used to do before I started running the Seattle Portland triangle is I used to just get whatever I could to get over to the LA area, and then out of LA get like whatever I could that was paying amazing to get out of LA. And then I would just try to get back to LA. And I was just basically running I-10, I-40 whenever I first started with Landstar. That's mainly what I did, was just I-10, I-40. And then the LA market crashed, and then I started running the Seattle Portland triangle. And now the Seattle Portland triangles kind of fell apart, and I'm trying to figure out what to do now. And the main two options that I'm thinking of at the moment are I could run up and down the 2935 corridor, basically up to the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and like Texas, just up and down through there, like Fargo, Minneapolis, down to Texas, just up and down the 2935, which I like running that. It's awesome. And just a second here, I got another message. Sorry. All right. I'll read that after I stop the video. Sorry, I was reading a message. Just let me sit there. You can sit there and watch me, with my mouth gaped open, reading for 5 minutes. No, I'll read that message after I end the video. But yeah, okay. So what I was trying to decide between was keep running the Seattle Portland triangle or switch over to the 2935 corridor. But now it's looking like the LA market is trying to make a comeback. So I'm thinking maybe I go back to what I was doing a couple years ago, running I-10, I-40 across the country. Like, all right, we got decisions to make. I'm going to have to start like checking out the load board and seeing what the markets are doing and figure out what I'm going to do when I leave the house. So I'll probably do another load board video on Monday. They're probably not going to get me. Last time, it took them a week to take me to put me back in service. It took them a week after I did all of my inspections and everything for them to process all the paperwork. And I had to call them like 3 or 4 times. It would have taken even longer if I had not been calling them. So it's probably going to take a week for them to put me back in service. So I'll keep monitoring the load board and try to get an idea of what's going on. Fuel prices are also a factor. if fuel prices were reasonable up in the Seattle Portland area, if they were at normal levels right now, I would I would still be willing to run the Seattle Portland, that triangle. But with fuel prices being higher than California in Seattle and Portland, like no, I'm not going to go up there and spend an extra $1.50 a gallon, $2 a gallon on fuel. Like the fuel prices up in Seattle Portland area are insane right now. Like they're crazy. Seattle is like Portland is the exact same price as LA, and Seattle is, what was Seattle? Was it 50 cents a gallon more expensive, or was it 25 cents a gallon more expensive? I can't remember. It was more expensive. So Seattle fuel is more expensive than LA fuel. Like that is crazy. That's absolutely crazy. So yeah, it looks like I'm probably going to be getting California legal and running the I-10, I-40. And I'm hoping, let's bust out my shiny new inverter that I paid 160 bucks for on Amazon. Well, it's closer to $200 with shipping and taxes and everything. 2000-watt pure sine wave. So my induction cooktop should work in the truck now. I took it out with me last time, it didn't work. And my APU air conditioner will not run off this inverter. The APU air conditioner, um, I installed a secondary air conditioning unit, a mini split on the truck, and it worked great for the first like day that I put it in. And then the generator failed on the APU, and it hasn't worked right since then. And the APU air conditioner doesn't work. I tried hooking it up to the Cobra inverter, but that thing's only putting out 900 watts. It doesn't put out enough power for the compressor to kick on. So I'm trying to rewire the generator on the APU so that I can use the mini split that I installed. And as a backup, I can hook it up directly to this inverter as a backup. Um, so I might have APU air conditioning. I don't know. I've been wanting to plug it into a regular outlet to try and figure out if the reason it's not working is just simply that it's not getting enough power, or if it just doesn't work. So I don't know. We'll figure that out. So I'm really excited about the possibility of having a functional APU air conditioner again. But anyway, this is a load board video, and we're past the load board. The load board broke on us, so I should wrap this up. I will most likely do another load board video on Monday. And what I'm going to try to do on Monday is it's not going to be a load board video just showing people like what's going on with the loads all over the country. It's going to be a load board video for me trying to figure out where I'm going to run whenever I leave the house. Trying to figure out what triangle I'm going to run whenever I leave the house. That's what I'm specifically going to do if I do a load board video on Monday. So anyway, have a good one. Bye.